The scripture for today is from the book of Luke, chapter 12, verses 32 through 34. Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." When my grandfather died in 2005, I inherited a house and a piece of land from him. It really wasn't mine, actually, it was my mother's. But I was living in it with him when he died. So practically speaking, I was responsible for maintaining it and making sure it was kept up after he was gone. Something great that my grandfather did while he was living was to stock the shed. Anytime I needed a belt for a lawnmower or a filter or almost anything else, for years after he was gone, I could find one in the shed. I don't mean a used one. I mean a fresh, packed in the original wrapper with the yellow Taylor's Do It price sticker still on it. It seems that for years before he died, every time I don't know if it's every time, but a lot of times when he purchased anything for the house, he purchased two. One for the moment that he needed and one for the future. It was wonderful. It was like a little gift from my grandfather every time I needed one. I was completely lost about how to run his home without him, but I grew to know for sure that if I ever needed any supplies to do something in my house or in the house, that I'd find it in the shed. And then the day came when I needed something. I forget what it was. Perhaps it was a piece of rope or some sort of hose. I can't remember. But I went to the shed expectantly and found what I needed that my grandfather had tucked away for me. I pulled it out of the brand new but now very dusty package and realized that it was dry rotted. I was disappointed. I could see the price tag on it. I knew that it had never been used, but it was now useless. And after that, I found more and more things like that. Things that had been stored up for future use that were now useless. That's when I became convinced that things fall apart. It was best to make the best out of whatever I had then, because saving it for later would betray me. When I left St. Croix to go back to school in Virginia, where I met my wife, where I started my real estate business, where I had my son, it was me following that lesson. This is what Jesus is telling the disciples in Luke 12:33. Make purses for yourselves that don't wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. That's what I was experiencing in my grandfather's shed. The end, the failing, the wearing out of the usefulness of my grandfather's treasure. It seems that Jesus thinks that believers store up things on the earth because we're afraid. He says to you and to me that the reason we shouldn't be afraid is that God delights in giving us the kingdom. He's excited to keep giving us what we need. There's lots to unpack in the scripture, but the point I think I'll end on is this. Imagine if my grandfather could see the future when he was buying the things to stock in the shed. He would see me looking confused and in mourning trying to figure out what to do about some problem without him, and then stumbling on something that was just what I needed at the time that I needed it. He would watch the sense of relief wash over me when I realized that I didn't have to figure out where to go get it or how much it costs. And each time he brought something else and tucked it away in the shed, he'd see me years later be excited when I stumbled across it, and then begin to expect to find something, and then be confident that it would be there. I can imagine him having a little mischievous, undentured laugh at it. I can imagine it would have given him great pleasure. If I can imagine that of my grandfather, why do we doubt that God, who is far better than my grandfather, wouldn't also delight in giving us everything that we need? In business, we often feel like we're the ones who have to make it happen. We can get fearful that a recession will hit, or that inflation will devalue our savings, or some big business will automate us out of a job, or blah, 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 blah. So we can get tempted to hoard, not just our money, but perhaps even our time, and sometimes our energy. The fact is, these things are also things that are falling apart. They can no more be captured than we can capture water in the cup of our hands. In those moments, it helps us to remember God delights in giving us the kingdom. God delights in giving you the kingdom. Say it with me. God delights in giving me the kingdom. What is that? What is the kingdom? Well, in my reading, it's everything. Because whatever it is, Jesus said that all the other things will be added with it. But only if we seek it first. Do you believe that God delights in giving you the kingdom? What are your doubts? What is your evidence that he does?